I want you guys to think for a moment here. Talk amongst yourselves. I want you to talk together, see if you can give me the coordinates. Now, coordinates are points, but the numbers of those points. So I need an x, y for each one of them. Give the coordinates of 4 points that are 3 units, 3 spaces, away from the origin, which is the middle, right? Now, you guys might be a little confused because there's no lines or grid marks up there, but I'll let you be creative and think of them as you do the activity. I'm going to give you a few minutes. Talk amongst each other, and I'll be with you guys in a few seconds to get those points. So we found all the points that are 3 spaces away from 0, and it comes out to make a circle if you actually find all of them. Now, the ones that we found, we can actually find the numbers really well. But as I've said, there are some points out here, and we don't know what they are. So we're just going to call it x and y, and that can represent all the points because they're variables, and variables represent an infinite number of points because that's about how many there would actually be. All right. Now, let's think a little bit more. How can we find those points? What points are 3 units away from the origin? Well, if we're looking for length and distance, then we should probably use the distance formula. In other words, what values of x and y work for this formula? Where if we subtract those from the middle point, it would come out to equal 3 when we did the distance formula. Okay? Well, what's the point of doing this? Let's go ahead and see. It pretty much is what's going to be giving us the equation of a circle. An equation is a number sentence or equation that represents all the points on a circle. Now, let's get rid of the square root on both sides. How can I do that really quick? Just for the heck of it. How do I get rid of a square root? You would square both sides. And if I did that, you would get this. You agree? If you square the left side, the square root cancels out. If you square the 3, you get 9. Good? All right. Now, that is the equation of the circle. This number represents the radius that's been squared. This number represented our center. And the x and y, those are all the points around the circle that are 3 spaces away from the center. So we're going to use the letter R to represent the radius. We're going to use the letter the letter H and the letter K to represent the 2 components of the center's coordinates. And the x and y represent all the points that are on the circle. This is what I'd like you guys to write down here. Okay, so like I was saying, guys, in the past we've done a few other equations of geometric objects in this class, like y equals mx plus b. That's the equation of a straight line. What 2 letters up there usually have numbers in their places? The m and the b. So like here's an example. You might get y equals 2x plus 3. You know, each of those numbers represents something that's constant for that object. In this case, the 2 would represent the slope. It never changes. And the 3 would represent the y-intercept, which never changes. But the x and y represent all the points, and there's an infinite number of points that are on that line. We also learned about quadratic equations. And we did them in vertex form. They look like a U shape, right? What letters up there had numbers in their place? A is one of them. X did not. We left X alone, but H did, and K did. This is just drawing from memory. Do you guys remember what the H and the K represented? Well, we're on a parabola. It represented the vertex of our parabola. And this number here kind of told us a few things. It told us about what direction it was going and how skinny it was, right? So, but look what stayed in both of these equations. The thing that stayed was the x and the y. Those just represent all the points that are on those. And there's an infinite number of them, so we have to leave them as variables because it's not just one thing. They don't stay fixed. Same thing down here with our circle. Everything's going to be replaced with a number except for the x and the y because those represent all the points, and there's an infinite number of them. But on a circle, how many centers are there? There's only one. So those numbers, h and k, are going to be fixed values. And when you have one circle, how many radiuses does it have? It has only one radius, so that number is going to be fixed also. So, but the x and the y will stay as variables because there's an infinite number of points on a circle, more than just one. So let's go ahead and do an example problem here. Go ahead and write down your directions and the information below. So in this problem, guys, we're giving you the radius in the center, and then your task is to find an equation for that. What would the equation of a circle be that has a radius of 8 and the center is at 0, -3? Well, we have a template for the equation of a circle. It's x minus h is squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. And I move the radius to either side. It doesn't matter which side it's on. Well, the 8 represents the radius, so what letter do you think that's going to go in for?
That number.
It's going in for r, right? So it's 8 squared Now, these numbers are a little bit trickier. 0 represents what? You'd want to say x because you're right, that is an x value. The first number in a coordinate pair is an x value. However, you got to remember that the x and y represented all the points that are on the circle, right? But this is the center. It's not on the circle, it's in the circle. So these points are actually the what? H and k. This is the h, the one that's being subtracted from the x. This is the k. So let's go ahead and plug them in now. We have x minus h, and h is 0. And we have y minus k, and k is a -3. And once again, there you have that whole double negative situation. So let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. First of all, 8 to the second power is 64, right? Double negatives become positive. And how do you think we can simplify x minus 0? Let me ask you this. What's 5 minus 0? 5, right? So what's x minus 0? It's just x, right? And there's the equation of a circle right there. So what we just got through doing was I gave you guys a radius and a center, and from that you guys got the equation. We're going to work backwards now. I'm going to give you the equation, and then you guys are going to find the radius and the center instead. So let's say I started off with this equation. Which of these numbers up here will help me find my radius? It's the 64. But my radius isn't 64. It was what? So, and it became 64 because we squared it. So if I gave you the equation to begin with, how would you get the radius from that number? You would square root it because that number is equal to r squared, not r, right? And so if we square root both sides, we can get the radius as 8. Another thing, if the x does not have a number being subtracted from it, that means that the h is 0. And now here's the really tricky part. It's hardest to remember here. It looks like my k is what here? It looks like it's 3. But really, what was my k? -3. It became positive because when you plug a positive into a formula with a negative, it becomes positive. Likewise, if you were to plug in a positive number into this formula, it would become negative. So you have to remember this, the formula has that negative in it, and it changes the h and k to different signs. So if you want to get your h and k, you got to remember to change the sign. So my k was actually a -3. Keep those things in mind as we do the next problem. Go ahead and write down your directions in number 1, please. Identify the radius in the center. So what number up there is going to help me find my radius, guys? The 16. Now that's not r though, that's r squared. So if r squared equals 16, I can find r by square rooting, and I get r equals 4. So my radius is 4. Now we got to find h and k, the center. So h is the number that's being subtracted from x, and k is the number that's being subtracted from the y. What number is being subtracted from the x? 3, right? Now see how it's a -3, but we got to remember that the formula reverses the signs. We talked about that. So what is h actually? It's a +3. And over here, the number with the y is a 1, but it's really supposed to be a Negative 1. So that's the first part of this problem, is finding the radius and the center. Right? Identify the radius and the center of the circle. Now part B is, we're going to graph it now.
Do you have to graph it?
This time we're going to graph it. Okay, so, good one. Okay, so to graph it, we need our x and y axis, of course, with a couple of notches on it. All right. We're going to start by finding our center. That's our starting point. So my center is 3, 1. I'm going to go right 3, down 1 for my center. Right? Okay, next. We got to find the points on the circle, and there's 4 really easy points to find. Where are they located?
Wait, what?
Where are the 4 easiest points to find that would be right on the circle?
Right around it, like a circle, like up and over.
There's a point above it, straight up, a point straight below it, left and to the right. And how many spaces am I going to go to get to those points? 4, because that's my radius. That's how high up they go. So I'm going to go up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put a dot. I'm going to go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put another dot. We're also going to go left and right 4. So once you have those 4 external points, you can kind of go ahead and give a rough draft sketch of your circle there. And it's not going to be perfect, but it's just a sketch. So for number 2, what is my center? The H is, there's no H and there's no K, which means there's 0, 0. And my radius, it's 1, because if you take the square root of that number, it's 1. So this will be a pretty simple one to graph. Dot right in the middle for the center, 0, 0. My radius is 1, so I go up 1, down 1, left 1, right 1.